Hey everyone, my name is Chloe and welcome to the first half of January wrap up. So, the first half of January, I came out with a bang, you guys. I have read 14 books in the first 14 days, which is crazy, but you'll see how and why. So, of those 14 books, I read 3,227 pages, which is 215 pages per day. I read 7 novels and 7 chapter books, so that's exactly how I did it. My daughter and I are in the Greetings from Somewhere series by Harper, and the books are short, but 2, we are just loving them, so we are blowing through them. But I read 6 adult, 1 young adult, and 7 middle grade. 8 were from my shelf, and 6 were from somewhere else. I read 4 of them from Libby because, even if they're on my shelf, a lot of the times I try to find like digital companions just because that's by far the quicker way for me to read right now and just the more accessible way for me to read because like today, I'm so tired. My head kind of hurts. Like reading with my eyes is just it doesn't even have like appeal to me. But listening to an audiobook and like laying and zoning out, that sounds lovely. So I read 4 from Libby, 4 from the library, 4 just on my shelf, 1 from Audible, and 1 from Hoopla. So 8 of them were physical, 5 were audiobook, and 1 was ebook. So I actually did read more physical, but that makes sense because a lot of them are chapter books that I read with my daughter. So 1 was a new release, and 13 were backlist. And then as far as genre goes, 8 were contemporary, 3 were nonfiction, 1 romance, 1 women's fiction, and 1 mystery thriller. So one of my goals for the year was to read more nonfiction or read 2 a month or something, I think was my specific goal. And I am killing that right now. Because you'll see the first 3 books that I read in the year were kind of like meh. And one of my biggest slump busters is reading nonfiction just because I feel like it's easier for my brain to comprehend. Like you don't have to follow a plot line. Although I did read some tougher ones this month that you really do have to put a lot of brain power into. But generally nonfiction helps me just kind of break the monotony and get into a better reading place. So as far as the star ratings go, I read 4 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, and 1 4.5 star. So let's just get into the books. As always, I will go through these books in the order that I read them, not necessarily the order that I enjoyed them or anything like that. And I will tell you a little bit about the book and a little bit about the star rating. And this year I did not make it an official goal, but it is like a low-key goal to try to scrounge up more of the physical books to have for these videos because inserting the picture is great, but like the more time I can save on the editing side, the more time I can film and make content and all of that. So bear with me as I try to like kind of transition. Also, if you guys noticed, I have been working on the cleaning up the shelves project. I need another shelf in here, but I can't figure out where it should go. So we've got a couple shelves that are done. You can kind of see a hint of I moved my nonfiction to the top. And so I think Jeremy might be trying to find some like small shelves that can go on top because I've got a little space on top of these shelves. So maybe, I don't know. But that is another one of my 2023 goals is to get this figured out. So it's work in progress. But let's get into the book. So the first one is Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's Magic by Betty Macdonald. And this is number 2 in the Mrs. Piggle Wiggle middle grade series. So this is a series from way back, like maybe the 1930s. I can't remember when they were published, but way back. And I loved the first one as a kid. I remember it fondly. And then my daughter and I read it. I still really enjoyed it. Now this one I did not like as much. It's a 3-star book for me because so the way the first one works is that like there's kids doing ordinary kid things that are problems. They're not wanting to bathe. They're not wanting to eat. They're not wanting to whatever it is. And so Mrs. Piggle Wiggle has a cure for each of them. And it's all things that are like natural consequences. If they don't want to clean up their toys, okay, let them make a mess until they can't get out of their room. That's one of the stories from the first one. Just kind of natural consequences of things. This one in Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's Magic is not natural consequences. It is a pillar of powder for everything. And I just don't like that because like it makes her into like this witch doctor and like I don't know, it's like drugging our kids like that. It was funny and sweet because it was practical and my kids could understand like that I mean, these are natural consequences. I could do these things. I could do these cures. But now just like going to get a pill or something is not, I didn't like that. Also, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle starts to show like depressive symptoms that are not like fun to read about. And also just like logistical, these are very long sentences and very long chapters. And maybe it's just a sign of the times, but it was a very like sloggy drag to read. So I gave it 3 stars, but maybe even less than that. And like I'm not motivated to continue on with the series. Next is North of Beautiful by Justina Chen. So this is a young adult book that I've had on my shelf forever. I don't even know why I picked it, but it's about a young girl who has a port wine stain on her face. And so a port wine stain is basically like a birthmark that is red, like a reddy purple port wine color. We have a friend who their family, one of their children has a port wine stain, so I'm a little bit familiar with this, but because of her port wine stain, she is very insecure and wears a lot of makeup and works out obsessively to make sure that her body fits like societal standards of beauty. And this book is meant to challenge what those societal like standards of beauty, and meant to say that beauty is far more than skin deep. However, I don't think this book went about it well at all. So this book, her dad is very abusive and her mother kind of copes through food. So her mother is grossly obese, and we hear a lot about how that impacts her, and it's very diet culture-y, very stereotypical, and not necessarily inauthentic. I'm not saying it couldn't be true, but then her like eating and exercise habits were never really discussed as like a problem. And I mean, it just screams like eating disorder, orthorexia, like bulimia, like with exercise bulimia, like it just wasn't good. And she meets this guy who is an Asian boy who was adopted by a white couple because he has a cleft lip. And so together they kind of bond, but I didn't really feel the romance between them, and it's meant to be a romance. And this just had great intentions but missed a lot of marks for me. So I'm giving it 3 stars, and I'll probably unhaul it. Next is Dear Wife by Kimberly Belle. So this has really high ratings on Goodreads, and so I am in the minority for saying this was just okay. So this is like just a very flat thriller for me. So it's about 2 perspectives. I think Beth is a woman who is running from something, an abusive husband, I believe, and then Jeffrey is looking for his wife. His wife has gone missing. So, of course, you are led to believe that Beth is Jeffrey's wife and that it's like a cat and mouse situation. Now, anytime anything is that glaringly obvious in a thriller, a seasoned thriller reader or really anybody would know that that's probably not what's going on. And there is a twist, but I was just very like meh about the twist. And I mean, this just was a very flat, basic thriller that did nothing for me. So 3 stars on that. Next is, I'm not going to pull out all the middle grades because my daughter, so after we read a book together, she likes to keep it and read it to herself. And so her room and like our middle grade books get scattered everywhere. And so I'll just insert a picture. But we read Karen's New Year by Ann M. Martin. So this is a part of the Babysitters Club Little Sister series. I'm not sure where it falls in the series. It's number 12 or something like that. And I gave it 3.5 stars. All of these books can be read out of order. You just know Karen better and know the families better and know the story better if you read the whole series, of course. But this is about New Year's, and everybody she's at the big house is what she calls it, which is her dad's house because her parents are divorced. So she's at her dad's house for New Year's, and there's a lot of kids and a lot of people that live at her dad's house, and they all make New Year's resolutions. And Karen is kind of a brat, and she keeps like a notebook of everybody's wrongdoings, of every time that people don't obey their own New Year's resolutions. And yet then she keeps amending her resolutions to fit what she's doing. And so there's a lesson about kind of staying in your lane, minding your business, not tattling. And that is an important lesson for us around here. We are deep in the tattle territory, but So Karen, a lot of people complain about this series because Karen is not the best kid, but I do think that it inspires a lot of conversation for us. So I'm still enjoying them, and I gave that one 3.5 stars. Next is Eat Up, Food, Appetite, and Eating What You Want by Ruby Tandoh. So I heard Lauren from Lauren in the Books talk about this a couple years ago, maybe last year, but I think it was a couple years ago. And then I heard somebody else talk about it recently. And so I looked at my library, they had it. And so I thought, what the heck? So 3.5 stars. This is kind of it's a nonfiction about, like, it talks about food and how eating and food and diets and all that kind of stuff are viewed in our society today. But it also has like kind of love letters to specific foods like Cadbury cream eggs and toast and that kind of stuff. And it was entertaining. I'm not going to remember it for very long. I didn't have a ton of like aha moments, but it was entertaining while I read it. And it is Ruby Tandoh, I believe, is from the UK somewhere. So yet it didn't seem like UK specific. So I enjoyed it, but just kind of, recommend it if it's interesting to you. Next is Fiddlesticks by Beverly Lewis. So this, I think, is number 11 in the Cul-de-sac Kids series. This is another series that I'm reading with my daughter. And Sean is a young boy that he and his brother are Korean, and they were adopted into a family in the book. And there's this boy that is relentlessly teasing him and calling him Fiddlesticks because he's skinny and he likes to play violin. And so he calls him Fiddlesticks and makes him very insecure. And Sean is wanting to go out for soccer, and this boy plays soccer. And so he's learning to overcome a bully. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars because it's talking about how even when people treat us terribly, we can't take it personally. We can't let it define us, and our response is to be with kindness, and how redemption comes through apologizing. And I really like these message. This book is written by Karen Kingsbury, and she is Beverly Lewis, and she is a Christian author primarily. And so these books have a lot of not necessarily faith imposed, but kind of faith, Christian worldview perspectives. And I really enjoy it. Next is this one, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. By Brianna Wiest. And this is something my good friend just randomly sent this to me. I had no idea it was coming, and it is so interesting. It is, this is one that I'm going to keep out for a long time because I will want to reread these over and over. Yeah, Minnie Mouse pencil. I will want to reread these over and over because they are just good reminders and things to think about and things to journal about if you're a journaler. Like, for example, The Psychology of Daily Routine, so why it works. And then it says, here are a bunch of bulleted reasons why routine is helpful and how things go with that. And things emotionally intelligent people do, and it's kind of a bulleted list. The majority of them are like a bulleted list like that, where they give you things, and I just really, really enjoyed it. It also gives you tips for how to kind of change a situation. I would say this is most geared towards people who are in that kind of new adult stage where they're kind of trying to figure out who and what they want to be in life. But it can be applied to anybody. And I don't feel like I missed anything. There's just a couple essays or whatever that are about finding love and who you want your partner to be and that kind of stuff. And that's already kind of a done deal for me. But you can still think it through. And things you need to know about yourself before you'll have the life you want. I'm trying to look at some of the ones that I found really impactful. If we saw our souls instead of bodies, the 6 pillars of self-esteem, why it's not how you feel, but what you think you're capable of. And that one's really resounding. And there's a lot of themes in this book about changing your actions to change your thoughts, because changing your thoughts is the ultimate goal, but that's really hard and abstract. And I feel like a lot of self-helpy books lately are just change your way of thinking. Well, okay, but that's hard. So I really enjoyed this book and will definitely continue to refer back to it. In fact, I asked her, I said, can I buy you a copy so we can talk about these every day? And she was like, well, she already ordered herself a copy. So we kind of talk through these as we're reading them, and it's really good. So I would highly recommend. She said she bought this because it's like TikTok famous, and I'm not huge on TikTok, so I don't know, but I would recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. Next is the Crabby Cat Caper by Beverly Lewis. This is also in her Cul-de-sac Kids series, and this was another cute one. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite because it's about a cat that runs away and finding the cat, and like it wasn't, I don't know, it was fine, but it wasn't like as impactful as Fiddlesticks. Then, you guys, I read Spare by Prince Harry. And I don't even know if I want to talk about this because I love Prince Harry. In fact, as a little girl, he was my crush, and he was one of him and Justin Timberlake were my crushes. And I just have a soft spot for him, and I have started watching the Netflix series, but I've only watched an episode or two because I just don't ever watch TV, and if I try, I fall asleep. And so, or it's like the middle of the night and I don't want to watch something so engaging that I stay up forever because if I can sleep, I want to. But so I read this book going in knowing that I loved him. And I'm going to give it 3 stars because I was honestly not that impressed. So I had it on audio, which I highly recommend because he narrates it himself. And I feel like that is the best way to consume most memoirs, but definitely this one. But I feel like it was a little scattered. Like it does go in a chronological manner, but there are like kind of thoughts all over the place. And this book primarily focuses on the death of his mother and how that kind of impacts him as well as his military career. And I found both very interesting. He also has no problem like exposing his side of the relationships within his family, and like it's fascinating, but it's also almost like too much at once, like between the 60 Minutes thing, the Netflix thing, and this all at once. It's like, yikes, like I don't know, some of it felt a little catty, some of it felt unnecessary. There were times that I was like, what is the point in this book? Because like I know the Netflix series is to kind of show he and Megan's story. Well, Megan comes into this story at the very end, but like them having kids is like kind of, we just assume that, and like that I would assume would be a really big part of his life, like worth talking about a little bit more. But I don't know. I wish he would have had maybe a better editor. And I would recommend it if you're a Prince Harry fan, but I don't know. It feels like a little much and a little too much for just the shock and awe factor. Then the next 3 that I read are the Greetings from Somewhere series by Harper Parrish. So we read The Mystery Across the Secret Bridge, which is when the kids are in Machu Picchu. So if you haven't heard me talk about this series, it is about a mom's a travel journalist, and so 2 kids named Ella and Ethan and their mom and dad take a year or something to go all over the world. As their mom takes pictures and stuff, the dad homeschools the kids. And the kids always go on these little mystery adventures by themselves. And I am loving this series because you get to learn about the location that they are at, as well as like have a little mystery involved. And so the Mystery Across the Secret Bridge is in Machu Picchu. And then we have The Mystery at the Coral Reef, which was in Australia. And it was, I think, my favorite of the series. I gave it 4.5 stars. And then The Mystery of the Icy Paw Prints, which is in Alaska. So 4 stars, 4.5 stars, so good. There's only one left. We're reading the last one in the series, and then the series is done. It's a 10-book series, and I feel like she could have gone on forever, but I think the last one was written in 2016, so my hopes are not high, but it is so good. And then last, I read the Rewind by Allison, Winn, Scotch, and I'm not sure if I'm going to give this 3 stars or 3.5. I do have this one, but it's not down here, so sorry for not holding it up. But I just read this one. I had really high hopes because I love Allison Winn Scotch, and this one fell flat for me. It's 3 to 3.5 stars. So it's about this couple, Frankie and Ezra, and they were college sweethearts. And then they broke up like on graduation day in a very big, dramatic way that we don't know about until later in the story. And they broke up and left things on bad terms. And so now it's 10 years later, it's 1999, and they are coming back together for a wedding and their college, like one of their college friends. And so they are not happy to see each other, of course. But then the next morning they wake up in bed together with rings on their fingers and no recollection as to what happened. And so I had a lot of hopes for this because 1999 was just like prime time, those late 90s, early 2000s are when I was a kid growing up. And I am in the minority, I think, because I thought I could have used even more 90s references, and other people said they really liked the 90s nostalgia, and I didn't feel like there was that much. But also, like, I kept expecting a twist as to why neither of them recalled anything. Like, they don't remember a single thing. And, like, being that blackout drunk, it doesn't feel believable to me. Like, it feels like one of them would at least be able to piece something together. So I kept expecting a twist of, like, a time travel twist or, like, some drugging or something to happen where it's, like, explaining how neither of them recall anything at all about the entire evening. But that never came. And also, like, Ezra and Frankie both are pretty unlikable, and she is like this music producer or something, and she has no intention of like settling down. Her mom and dad got pregnant really young, and then her dad, I think, kind of disappeared. They have a bad relationship. Just not a good example of what like marriage and parenthood and all that kind of stuff is. And so she's like, I want no part in that. And Ezra is like very Enneagram type 6. Like, he's very fear-based and very loyal and really wants to fit into societal expectations, and kind of like, he's got a really high-paying job and he's happy about that. He met a girl online that he's dating, and it just checks all the boxes. He wants to propose to her, which is why it's even more like, oh my gosh, am I already married? And I just didn't feel really that much spark between them. And like the drama was a lot between them. And the book takes place in one day, but we get a lot of flashbacks where we learn about their relationship. And I don't know, it just felt kind of toxic. And I don't know. So the ending was sweet. I liked it. That's what's making me think maybe 3.5 stars. Like, I don't know. I'll probably keep it on my shelves because I like Allison Winn Scotch, and this is just not one of her best. And it was around New Year's, but I think you could read it really anytime, because he wants to propose on New Year's Eve to his girlfriend, and he's a big fan of the like sweeping dramatic gestures, and so he wants to do that. But there's a lot that gets in the way. So I don't know about that one. So overall, it was an okay reading month. My average, I don't know if I said, but my average was 3.61, which, like, I feel like maybe I was a little too generous of a rater in some of these, because it didn't feel like a great first half of the month, and yet I'm still pretty motivated to read. So I have a whole lineup here on my phone of things on Libby, and I'm reading physically with my daughter the end of the Greetings from Somewhere, and I don't know what she'll pick next, but we'll see. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what was the best book that you have read so far, and we'll see you in the next one.